I just legit know that you guys are tuning in and just want to know how much for the Ezreal, and I'm just putting it right there. Ezreal is gonna be a $100 plus card. There's no way this card is gonna be cheaper. And disclaimer, those prices here, they're gonna be higher. I'm gonna explain to you right now. Those prices that you're gonna see here on the tier list are gonna be the ones after Vegas and Bologna. But before Vegas and Bologna, those cards are gonna be, in my opinion, around 40 to 50% more expensive. So if you're competing in Bologna or in Vegas, all of the prices that you're gonna see in this video, you have to add the 40-50% because there's gonna be so much demand for the top tier decks that it's gonna be insane. And people will not have, for Bologna, people will not have enough time to actually buy from like TCG Player Card Market, right, to get them in time. There's not gonna be enough time because the tournament is just a week after the initial release. So it's gonna be so hard to get anything through like the official channels. You're gonna have to go through your shady dealer, and you're just gonna do it from a Facebook group and so on, and just meet in Italy in a dark alley to buy your cards. So Riot, I beg you, please do the next regionals 2 weeks after the release of an expansion, because this is way too early by like few days. All right, let's talk about it. So Ezreal, in my opinion, $100+ because it's so playable, such a powerful card. It's only gonna get more and more powerful in the future the more additional costs we get. Drawing cards is always good. It has like, it has everything, man. And currently purple is just so incredibly overpowered. Like this card is just not going anywhere. And if you're gonna play Ezreals, you're gonna play them in free copies because they're gonna most likely be included in your engine. Like you're either gonna be drawing cards or you're gonna be reducing the cost, and both of those things are gonna be like main thing that you're gonna be doing in your deck, or like at the same time. So there's no way this card is gonna go lower in demand. And currently with the Miracle Draven, with potentially Ezreals playing this as well, Seavers, like all of those decks, they want to play 3 of the Ezreals. So this card, instant over $100, is gonna be the most expensive epic in the entire game. And by the way, I have no idea what they are smoking there in China. Those are the Chinese prices, but in the Hong Kong dollars. So the Ezreal, the purple Ezreal, when you calculate this to dollars, it's $32. $32 for the purple Ezreal in China. The signature spell of the Draven, the spinning axes, are actually more expensive than the Ezreal in China. There's some insanities over here. Like, why on earth is the Blade of Ruined King costing you almost the same as an Ezreal? I will never know. This is $25 US dollars for the Blade of Ruined King. This is some really ridiculous prices. Like there are some really like just completely mind-boggling ranges of prices. Like over here we have the Irelia costing you $13, the green Irelia that you have to play in an Irelia deck. You cannot not play it in an Irelia deck, and you're most likely gonna have more than one copy. It's costing you $13. Like this is some maddening stuff when you see how little they value the cards that in theory should be meta defining. But now let's go back to actual prices that I think are gonna be happening in US and in Europe, kind of similar prices, but I think European prices are gonna be like 20% smaller than the American ones. For some reason, just Americans like to buy out shit and just scalp the hell out of them. It's not happening in Europe that much. Anyway, Spinning Axe, so they're gonna be incredibly expensive. Most popular deck on in the entire game, and even though the Miracle Draven doesn't play Spinning Axes and will not play Spinning Axes, right? The more popular version, the mid-range one, has to play free. Playing less than 3 is pure trolling. If you play less than 3, that means that you just don't have the additional copies and you just don't want to spend money or something. So Spinning Axe is gonna be a $70 minimum card, more like 80 probably, maybe like even 90 depending on the demand, but it's gonna be incredibly expensive. You're gonna be happy when you're gonna open it in a box. If you get a box with Ezreal and a Spinning Axe, you're just literally spinning. Then Defiant Dance, third most popular deck. I think Irelia will actually be the third most popular deck, and the only problem is gonna be like, will it be third popular right now? Because it's gonna be having problems with the how many Defiant Dance you can have, like for Bologna and for Vegas, because you need 3 copies of it. So it's gonna be a kind of similar position to like Spinning Axe, but it's gonna be cheaper than Spinning Axe because they're gonna be like, I would say, half of the demand, maybe 1/3 of the demand of Spinning Axes. So we're gonna have to like I would say Defiant Lens is gonna be like between 60 to 80, right? 60, 70, and then Spinning Axe is gonna be like 70 to 90, for example. So around that price. Now maybe it's controversial because the green Irelia, you can just play one if you play an Irelia deck, but I think that's a mistake, and you should have more of them. So in my opinion, it's gonna be still a very expensive epic, and you need it. If you want to play in Irelia, you have to spend big bucks because you have to get 3 Defiant Lenses, and you have to get minimum, in my opinion, 2 Irelias to feel like comfortable. The next tier, the $25 up, is gonna be Last Rites and the Relentless Pursuit. Now hear me out. Last Rites in most decks is gonna be played in 1 copy, but only if you play red, because then you're gonna have also Vi, and they will act like a engine to recycle your cards, so you don't have to get like 2 Last Rites. But if you play non-red decks, then you're gonna play like 2 copies of Last Rites, and unless something changes, maybe even 3. But I think 2 is gonna be the most common number for the purple non-red decks that want to play Last Rites. And overall, it's way more playable than I thought it's gonna be, because I thought it's gonna take time for this card to actually be playable. So I was thinking this is gonna be a cheaper in this expansion, but because Miracle Draven already popped up, this card is actually banging. So don't expect to spend less than $25 on the Last Rites, in my opinion, but it's gonna be actually on the closer to like 40 in my opinion. Now Relentless Pursuit is gonna be on the edge, so it's like, in my opinion, the $25, it's not going to be costing more than $25, like maybe like 30, right? But it's a, let's say like this, Lucian is going to be a pet deck, and it's also pretty good. Just don't play the combo version that just plays like, you know, the Trinity Forces and the Skyfalls or Arians. Like, this is not a good deck. Just play a normal one, you know? And Relentless Pursuit is an incredible card. And like, if this would be in any other like more popular champion, I feel like this would be really skyrocketing to like this kind of level of Defiant Lens and Spinning Axes. But Lucian is not first and foremost that popular. Also, it's very one-dimensional, so Relentless Pursuit, because of that, is gonna be cheaper. But it's gonna be a pet deck, and it should be more popular in Europe and NA than it is in China. Now the next year, $15 to $25, we're going from like highest prices to lowest prices, right? So the upper of $24 is gonna be the Shurelias. The lower, so like around $15, is gonna be the Draven, and then anything in between, right? And here we have a set of signature spells and the Draven. The Draven is because it's a Draven, but it's like it's only played in the purple decks that are trying to cheat out, right? So like an Irelia deck, for example. I've seen some Miracle Dravens play actually Audacious, but that's just crazy talk. Anyway, it's a Draven. It's a nice artwork, and people like Draven, and I think because of that, he's gonna be on the $15 mark rather than like lower, even though it's not as playable as people would like him to be, you know? So we're gonna keep him there. Now the most playable from here, by like standards of how much you need it, like you cannot really play an own deck without Shurelias, but that's the only signature gear that I think he really badly needs, and the rest is like whatever. And you have to remember that Shurela's Requiem will gonna be printed, at least if we keep the same print runs, Shurela's Requiem is gonna be 1/3 of the overall signatures print, right? So you need 1 Shurelias, but there's gonna be 3 less of them on the market than a normal signature. So because of that, the price will be a little bit higher than normal ones. Void Rush, it's kind of similar to Relentless Pursuit. People just like Rek'Sai. It's a deck that tries to make you think that you're doing something, so it's like kind of cool, you know? And those decks are typically like the decks that people like to play. That's why Lucian and that's why Rek'Sai are gonna have, in my opinion, a little bit higher prices on their signatures, because in both of those decks, you need those signatures. And the decks are doing a lot of like flippy flappy, you know, things with the cards, even though they might not actually do all of them like efficiently. Now Riposte is an interesting case, because I'm fully aware that 1 copy of Riposte is in the starter deck for Fiora, but the problem is that every Fiora deck needs 3 copies. Like, again, if you're gonna play 2 copies, that means that you just don't own the 3rd one. So you have to get either 3 starter decks, and it all depends on how big the print will be and the accessibility of it, right? But then you only need like 1, maybe 2 of the new yellow Fioras, which are also in the starter deck. So you probably would prefer to buy the Riposte off the market after buying 1 starter deck. So in this case, this will be actually making the riposte cost a little bit higher. And you have to remember that Fiora actually already did prove that she's a playable deck, and it's actually probably stronger than people think, so people will flock to playing Fiora. Or even in my own city, we already had some locals with Spiritforged, and we had multiple players playing Fiora. I think Azir is very hard for me to place because it's a very one-dimensional deck, and they're gonna be fans of Azir, and then Arise has to be played in 3 copies, and they're only gonna be in the boosted boxes. I feel like the lower of the 15 to 24 mark is gonna be the spot when they're gonna end up, and maybe they're not even gonna be more expensive for Bologna and Vegas because people don't expect Azir to actually be a real contender for like winning a tournament. It's pretty easy to read what the deck is doing, so if you're a capable player, the Azir deck is not really that great. So Arcane Shift for Ezreal is kind of in a peculiar spot because it's an expensive deck. You want to have 3 prodigal Ezreals. I know someone's gonna say, but you can play just only 1 because you will have it in your old champion unit, you know, so on. Doesn't matter. Like, the deck is gonna most likely revolve around repeating and drawing shit ton of cards, so you need 3 prodigal Ezreals. And even though it might not be popular now, it's gonna be probably going up in price, and I'm talking here about Arcane Shift, in the future. The more units we get that have an interesting effect when they enter the game, the more value from Arcane Shift, and that's gonna be going up. So right now, I don't think it's gonna be that expensive, but it's gonna be a good buy if you can buy it on the cheaper side of like the $15 to $20, because if you ever want to play Ezreal, they are probably gonna be at the cheapest after the regional tournaments here. Now let's talk about the bulk of cards that are going into the $7-14 range. Now 14 is gonna be the highest here, and 7 is gonna be the lowest, and anything in between is like, you know, from those 2 ranges over here. And let me just explain quickly. Counter-Strike is just good because if you play Jax, you have to have it, right? It's just so good. So some people will be fans of Jax, and because of that, they're gonna play it, even though I don't think Jax is gonna be super popular. Bone Shiver currently is essentially only played in Lucian and maybe as a one-off in a Fiora, even though she doesn't need it, or maybe a set where it's a little bit more like logical to play, but again, not really super efficient like to play in those decks, right? So basically only Lucian. And then we have Azir. When you play Azir, you probably only have play 1 copy and you use it when you need it. That's about it, right? Spellsonger, and this was actually controversial, and when I was doing the stream, doing this tier list, there was a lot of disagreement about Spellsonger, and I think Spellsonger should be in this tier around like $10, because right now it's only playable with 3 copies inside of an Ornn, and that has to be the very slow Ornn with the blue Ornns as a champion unit, not the other aggro one, right, that plays the green one. So Spellsonger has a very little demand, but then if with that demand, that deck requires you 3 copies of. But at the same time, like, the only deck that can play maybe even 1 copy would be a green Irelia. I mean, sorry, green Irelia. There's an Irelia deck, but it's not that important. Like, that's why I'm currently setting up around like $10 mark. Same goes for the Forge Fire Cape, because you might not even play it in an own deck. Sometimes you will, sometimes you won't. Maybe it's gonna be in the sideboard depending on how the meta like shapes, because maybe if Victor on tokens is gonna be playable, then you have to get it, right? You have to get it, but at the same time, very little demand for this card because you only need 1 copy as well, right? So you have to remember that. So I think overall the problem with own decks is as well like this: if the cards are gonna be too expensive, the demand is gonna be high. The demand is gonna be low. So if the own decks are gonna be too high, you're not gonna have players who want to spend cash on an own deck unless they're literally like own lovers and they just love him for him being him, and that doesn't happen often. So in my opinion, that will naturally drop the prices down, and unless he proves himself that he's gonna be like one of the best decks in the entire format, they will stay in this like $7-14 range when it comes to Spellsonger and Forge Fire Cape. Now, Skyfall of Arion, I feel that this is a card that is only gonna be played in 1 deck, and that deck is not even good, but it might be something decent in the future, so I'm just putting it on like the lower end of the 7 to 14. Actually, you know what, this card should be like a little bit more like here than anything else. Like, yeah, probably like more on the like $8-9 range, I would say. But then Downwell, now hear me out, I think that this card should be in your sideboards when you play against Miracle Draven. Now, or even, I don't know, maybe against other decks as well, but that's at least what I'm thinking right now. So this might actually be not a free off, but like kind of in demand card for the knowers, and because of that he might jump like here. But right now, I think it's not gonna have any demand and you can actually kind of buy it a little bit cheaper. Rek'Sai, you only need one if you play Rek'Sai, so that's why she's gonna be here. I think she would be more expensive if you would actually need more copies than one, but because you have access to it, you can just put it one. It's just like in a Kai'Sa deck, you play only one Kai'Sa and that's gonna be good enough. Premonition right now is gonna be on the cheaper side, and I think you should probably buy like 1 or 2 copies for yourself if you're ever gonna play blue in the future, because this card is gonna only get better with future expansions, and I think this card is gonna be played as a one-off in any Kai'Sa, at least in the sideboard. Maybe if you have space, this is gonna be a good card. Like, it's very cheap, 2 for 2, and then you draw 3. I think that's a great card, and also reaction, which is also important, right? So in my eyes, Premonition is actually a very good card that will be underutilized for now, and it's gonna be less expensive because of that. Sevier, I'm putting her like not in the bin, but at the same time, like, she's Sevier. There are fans of her, you know. That's why she's gonna be on the lower end of the $7.14 dollar range, and I don't think she's like super duper playable, because the only only playable version of Sevier right now is either gonna be like full Aurora, and then she's gonna maybe be played as a one of there, or you play the Miracle version of Sevier and then you don't play her at all. And now we're gonna have the bulk epics that are gonna be like below $6, right? So none of them are gonna be like really incredible, and even the most playable ones from here are actually more easily accessible, because, for example, Fiora Worthy, which is very playable, you're gonna play at least one copy in the Fiora deck. You probably will not play full 3. If you're not playing full 3, that means that every single Spiritforged, like pre-constructed deck with Fiora, might be just enough for you to have enough of the yellow Fiora to play your Fiora deck, right? But Riposte, you need 3. So now we can see why she's gonna be in the Bull Epics, because I don't think you're gonna play 3 copies every single time, and because of that, the demand is gonna be lower for her. Very similar case for the Rumble Scrapper, because Rumble Scrapper is again available in the pre-constructed decks of Rumble, and at the same time, the mech decks, they're not gonna have a very high demand. So when you have not a high demand, and you also have pre-constructed decks together, well, then Rumble Scrapper goes into the bull. Just remember that this particular tier is not set up in like, oh, from cheapest to like highest. Like, this is that. There's no difference here how they're being set up. So all of that is just in the same tier of just being bulk, in my opinion. And if you really want to think which could be the most expensive from this one, is probably gonna be maybe the Fiora, maybe the Blade of the Ruined King, and maybe Hostile Takeover, because those actually are kinda playable to some degree, right? The Ancient Henge, till we're actually gonna see a Misfortune, like a really aggro deck with a lot of bullet time, and then Ancient Henge in it. I don't even know if we're gonna play more than one copy of Ancient Henge in that kind of deck. On the Hunt is an incredible card, but we don't have an archetype literally now to use more than one copy, and even one copy is a little bit maybe too high, because it's such a very specific niche card in very specific scenarios she's used, right? And it still costs 2 power, which is insane. Jax is just poop. Like, this guy is poop. The only deck that I could see utilizing this card, apart from a Jax deck, right, is gonna be a Fiora. And Fiora maybe will utilize 1 copy, but he's still ass. So I don't see him being played at all. Danger Zone is not even a free of in Rumble decks, so why on earth, right? Border. On might be a little more expensive if he proves himself that the aggro on is a little bit better in the metagame. Then this might actually be like at the almost end of the bulk epics, you know, and is actually gonna be the most expensive epic from all of those. Dune Breaker, again, most likely 1 copy, right? Tiana Trangard. Crown Guard is only playable in the on version of the control deck, right? When you can, but you don't have to play Tiana. And the other maybe deck that could play it is a Leona with baited hooks. Again, holy shit, who plays those decks, right? So I know one person. That's you, David. Then Renata, we don't need to make a comment. Zero Drive, again, like currently not really super playable, maybe abusable in the future. Corina Veraza, if you play yellow, you probably play also blue. If you play yellow-blue, then you probably play Watchers instead of this, right? It's like, why I would like to play Corina Veraza. So again, not really the best like example, right, of a playable epic. And if you play this, probably 1 copy. And the Red Lucian is just absolute ass. Like, holy. And why this artwork is on this guy? Like, I think I would rather have an expensive Lucian, the orange one, because he's playable in Fiora and he's playable in Lucian, so he's playable in like 2 decks, and just swap them. Just give the orange Lucian this artwork and make him an epic. I'm okay with that, you know, because it's so sad that the playable Lucian doesn't have this artwork. It's really awesome. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. We're gonna do res next video, and there's gonna be some surprising stuff there as well. Oh, leave a like, comment, and maybe a subscription if you like the video, you know, that helps a lot.